Hi, everyone. In Puerto Rico, 1 week after Hurricane Maria struck, conditions are not getting better. They are getting worse. Not only is water, power, and food scarce now, money is scarce as well, as the U.S. territory witnesses near total shutdown of its economy. And here now with us to give us more insight on what's going on is Tony Suarez with the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference. Thank you for joining us, Tony.
Thank you for having me again.
And thanks for all of you for joining us on Facebook Live. Please feel free to let us know that you're here, where you're listening from, and if you have any questions about what's going on in Puerto Rico, we'd love to hear. Tony, you are working with 40,000 churches that are affiliated with the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference and asking them to get involved with churches in Puerto Rico. So tell us about what you know about what's going on in Puerto Rico, first of all.
Well, we know that there is 100%. 100% of the island has been without electricity. We know that there's been distribution brought to the island. There's supplies ready to be delivered, but there's complications in actually getting the things that have been sent to the people. Then there's planes that are ready to go. There's boats ready to go from the U.S. that still can't make it to Puerto Rico. So it's chaos. It's disorganization. Now, thankfully, the president today passed an order so that it would hopefully open up a little bit. Open up some of these lines and supplies. Yeah, and the shipping getting to Puerto Rico. But there's so much more that has to be done. And a lot of it is going to be solved with our finances and supporting so many organizations like CBN 700 Club, is Operation Blessing, Convoy of Hope, the NHCLC, so many that are going to be boots on the ground. Some are already there. And this is going to be an ongoing effort. This isn't, sadly, it's not something we're going to solve in a week or even a few months. We're going to have to be there for the long haul to restore and rebuild. As Pastor Sam said, this is going to have to become Puerto Rico 2.0. Yeah,
it's so interesting. I was reading accounts today of people can't get to their ATM machines. They literally can't get money, and or their jobs, don't exist right now. So economically speaking, just even from a cash basis, people are just struggling.
Yeah, and if you think here in the U.S., if you think about the lines that we saw for gas in Florida and Texas, think about now being on an island where the oil has to be shipped into this. They say that the lines for gas right now in Puerto Rico are over a mile long. So, I mean, it's even at that point, I mean, we really need a long-term solution, and it's going to take the government, it's going to take the churches, it's going to take everybody coming together. It won't be one organization that solves this alone. That's why, we've announced a campaign that's called Puerto Rico and Mexico RiseUp.org, because we have to look at this. We have to look at how can we help this country or this speaking of Puerto Rico, this territory, how do we help it rise up collectively together? So many churches, over 3,000 churches have been lost in this tragedy. As a former church...
The church buildings themselves have been lost.
Absolutely. And as a former church planter, I planted a church in Virginia. I think about those pastors who have given their all to lift up and plant a church, and now buildings are gone, resources are gone. But yet at the same time that these buildings have been gone, the church is that beacon of light in Puerto Rico. People are coming to their pastors and coming to churches once they can find each other again and asking, how can we come together? And I think it's impacting, and I think it's prophetic. When we see all the divisiveness that's going on right now, even within our own country, to see how people are coming together in the midst of tragedy, whether it was Houston or Florida, and now Puerto Rico and Mexico, you see that there is this prevailing spirit of unity, that when we need each other, we don't look at the color of skin, we don't look at our denomination, we don't even really look at what religion each one is. We just come together, and Mexicans are rebuilding Mexico City and Ciudad Puebla, and Puerto Ricans are coming together, and as soon as we can get there, we're going to be in Puerto Rico helping them rebuild that island for the glory of the name of Jesus.
Absolutely. It's so interesting because all the news accounts pretty much right now are doom and gloom. And I was struck reading Samuel Rodriguez's op-ed piece yesterday, and he's talking about rebirth, and he's talking about 2.0. And I thought, wow, as Christians, we have a hope, and we are called to see how the Lord might be working through these situations. So what is the vision, the hope for how churches can help lead in Puerto Rico for what good could come out of all of this?
Well, there's several ways that we can help, but Pastor Sam or Reverend Rodriguez's message of hope it's that true Christian message of restoration and a second chance and a second hope, and that's what we believe. We're living in this proverbial pursuit of the blessed hope, and we believe that even in the midst of tragedy, God can bless, He can heal, He can reconcile, restore. Puerto Rico is already in an economic crisis. All this did was make it worse, but we believe that with the church coming together and us rebuilding, we believe Puerto Rico can be a better island post-Hurricane Maria than it was before. One of the ways we can do that is by stateside churches adopting churches in Puerto Rico. I might not be able to go to Puerto Rico. Well, in fact, Pastor Sam and I are going to Puerto Rico in a matter of weeks. But if you're not able to go to Puerto Rico, maybe your church can sponsor or adopt a church in Puerto Rico or adopt a pastor. They're going to need finances for at least a year. This is not something that we can fix with a one-time act to Puerto Rico. So there's ways that we can rise up. There's ways we can come together. Just, earlier this month, we celebrated Education Sunday in the NHCLC. And in Puerto Rico, there was thousands of churches that participated in Education Sunday and encouraging kids. They're going to go back to school. They prayed over these children. You're going to graduate. And now some of these kids might not be able to go to school the rest of the year. So there's legislation that legislative solutions that we're looking at where a child might be able to graduate early if he can. There's different things, but we need to just look at the entire. This is more than just we have to deliver food, we have to deliver supplies, we need resources and finances, but how do we help kids to continue their pathway to education?
Absolutely. How many churches are on the island? What can you tell us about, believers on the island?
Well, I don't know the exact number of churches. I know the Assembly, I believe it's the Assemblies of God and the Iglesia de Dios MAE, Church of God MI. There's over 3,000, 4,000 churches alone. I know that the Baptist, or the number of Baptist churches, I think is well over 1,000. I know that the Texas Hispanic Baptist Convention has already had boots on the ground there as well. So you're talking about thousands of churches. Puerto Rico is it's a place full of a lot of faith, a lot of energy, spiritually speaking. So the church is the hope. We're built on this promise that at the end of the day, the gates of hell shall not prevail. Jesus let us know this was the hope of the world. And what better place, especially in the Latino community, where a church is not just a house of worship, it's a point of contact, it's where you meet your friends, your family. You go to church. You go to church at 10 a.m. and you might not leave till 3 p.m. because that's where you eat lunch, that's where you play sports, that's where you get crisis counseling, and et cetera, et cetera. So these churches are going to be the beacon of hope in Puerto Rico, and it's where people are looking to for their help right now.
And that education piece sounds interesting too, if they can even think creatively about how to help kids, move on in the midst of all of this.
Absolutely. Just think of that young person that was about to go into high school, who had dreams of a scholarship, and now they're going to lose their senior year in high school. It's not their fault that a hurricane hit. So how can we help them through whether it's through the government or other ways? How can we help them so that their dreams aren't deterred? We know that they need to finish high school. We know that they need to go to college for this, the proverbial American dream. So how can we help them to make sure that they reach their potential and be able to fulfill their dream of graduating?
I love that idea of a church here adopting a church there too. That seems so practical and a way you can get your arms around the crisis rather than just saying, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I wanted to ask you too about Mexico because 2 earthquakes there in the last month. And so that country is reeling. What are you hearing from partner churches on the ground about how things are at and what the needs are?
Mexico really needs supplies. Now, again, it's a little easier, and that's relative, but it's a little easier for us to send semi-trucks right now from Texas into Mexico and get supplies. It's much harder to Puerto Rico. We're having to send cargo planes. New York City Councilman Fernando Cabrera, who's also an NHCLC board member, is partnering with us. We're sending charter planes from New York to get to Puerto Rico. When it comes to Mexico, we have semi-trucks that we can send, and we can fill those with supplies. There's pallets. There's a church in Houston named Life Church, Pastor James Kilgore, who already has over 20 pallets of supplies that are ready to be put on these semi-trucks and taken to Mexico City. So the way we can most effectively help in Puerto Rico is to find a church that might already be doing it, or maybe your church can begin a supply drive and then partner with Operation Blessing or Convoy or other groups, or go to the N8CLC's website, Puerto Rico and Mexico Rise Up, and let us know where you are, and then we can coordinate so that we can take semi-trucks. Convoy had a report where they said that for $6,000, they could fill a semi-truck with like $42,000 worth of supplies. That's something that a church could get behind and say, you know what, we'll fill one semi-truck this month. And I mean, just imagine the blessing that is. But I've been impressed, especially in Mexico, when we saw those buildings fall, and those school buildings that fell on those children. I was so impressed by the Mexican people, seeing them rally and come together. And again, I hurt for them, but I see this unity of people. They don't. Who knows who's Pentecostal and who's Catholic and who's white and black? There, all those differences that we're fighting about, all the things that we're arguing about over social media, they just don't matter anymore in a moment of tragedy. And I think that it's that spirit of unity that, you know, Acts chapter 2, when you know, forgive me for being preachy, but when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all in one accord. And I see Puerto Rico becoming unified. I see Mexico becoming unified, and even the United States, with everything that's dividing us, there is this spirit of unity that's wanting to come forth and break out within the Christian church, saying, I'm going to forget about football right now because there's hurting people in Mexico and in Puerto Rico that need my help, and so I'm going to forget about all the rhetoric that people are arguing about on social media, and I'm going to find out who I can partner with to literally be the hands and the feet of Jesus to hurting people.
Yeah, well, there is a lot we can focus on that is good, and a lot I think we can leave behind.
Amen.
We're going to leave it at that. Tony Suarez, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Please feel free to share this with your friends, and please prayerfully consider how